I remember the exact moment my son's words cut through me like a knife. We were standing in his kitchen. The one I'd helped him buy when he got married to Renee 5 years ago. The countertops were cluttered with empty beer bottles and takeout containers. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes. Marcus hadn't been taking care of things since Renee left 6 months ago, taking only her clothes and leaving him with their 4-year-old son. Elijah, I come over that Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for being here. If this story touched you, please subscribe and don't forget to leave a comment. I read every one of them, and it's how I see just how far our stories are reaching. Because I hadn't seen Elijah in 3 weeks. 3 weeks of calling, of leaving messages that went unanswered, of lying awake wondering if my only grandchild remembered my face. Marcus kept making excuses. Elijah was sick, they were busy. They had plans. I knew something wasn't right, but I never expected what happened next. Marcus, I said, my voice steady despite the anxiety churning in my stomach. I just want to see Elijah for an hour. I can take him to the park or just sit with him here. Whatever works for you. He didn't look up from his phone, not today. Ma, we're busy. The house was silent except for the faint sound of cartoons from the living room. There were no signs of busy, just neglect. I haven't seen him in almost a month, I pressed, adjusting my purse strap. I was wearing my good blue dress, the one with pockets and sensible shoes. I'd even brought Elijah's favorite oatmeal cookies in a tin. I'm worried about him. Marcus finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot. Worried about him or trying to check up on me? You think I can't handle my own kid? That's not what I said. You don't need to say it. Always looking over my shoulder. Always judging. I sighed. Marcus, I raised you by myself after your father died. I know how hard it is. I'm just trying to help. He slammed his phone down on the counter. I don't need your help. I'm not a child then. Stop acting like one, I said, regretting the words as soon as they left my mouth. His face darkened. You know what? You've lived long enough, Ma. You've had your time. This is my house, my kid, my life. I decide who sees Elijah and when. The words hit me like a physical blow. You've lived long enough, my own son. The boy I'd nursed through fevers and nightmares, driven to basketball practice, worked to jobs, to put through college telling me I'd outlived my usefulness. What did you just say to me? My voice was barely a whisper. You heard me. I'm sick of you coming around, acting like you know better. Maybe it's time you back off and let me live my life. I don't need you hovering anymore. I stood there, clutching the cookie tin so hard my knuckles turned white, tears welling in my eyes. But I wouldn't let them fall, not there, not in front of him. Where is Elijah? I asked, forcing steel into my voice. Watching TV and you're leaving. I put the tin down on the counter. Can I at least say goodbye to him? No, Marcus said, straightening to his full height, a good foot taller than me. It's confusing for him. Just go. I walked to the door, my legs feeling like they might give out beneath me. As I reached for the handle, I heard a small voice. Grandma? I turned to see Elijah standing in the hallway. His Spider-Man pajamas hanging loose on his small frame. His hair hadn't been combed in days. There were dark circles under his eyes, making him look older than his years. I smiled despite everything. Hey, sweet boy. He ran to me, wrapping his arms around my legs. I bent down to hug him properly, breathing in his scent. He smelled and washed, like he hadn't had a bath in a while. I miss you, he whispered. I miss you too, baby. I whispered back. Marcus appeared behind him. Elijah, go back and watch your show. Grandma's leaving. Elijah clung tighter. Can Grandma stay, please? No. Go back to the living room, now. The harshness in his voice made Elijah flinch. He looked up at me with wide eyes, then reluctantly let go and trudged back toward the living room. Shoulders slumped. Marcus opened the front door. Don't come back unless I call you, he said, his voice low. I mean it, Ma. I'll change the locks. I walked out without another word, making it to my car before the tears came. I sat there for a long time, hands shaking on the steering wheel, replaying Marcus's words in my head. You've lived long enough. The drive home was a blur. My little house felt emptier than ever when I walked in, the silence pressing in from all sides. I hung my purse on the hook by the door, slipped off my shoes and sat at the kitchen table. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the quiet. It was just past 4 in the afternoon. But it felt like midnight. I made myself a cup of tea, my hand still trembling slightly as I filled the kettle. The routine motions were comforting, setting out the mug with the faded roses that Marcus had given me for Mother's Day years ago, placing the tea bag inside, waiting for the water to boil. Normal things, safe things, things I could control. As I sat there, cradling the warm mug, the shock began to fade, replaced by a deep aching worry, not for myself, but for Elijah. The state of the house, the way his pajamas hung on his small body, the unwashed smell of him, the dark circles under his eyes, Something wasn't right, and Marcus wasn't letting me help. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing Elijah's face. The way he clung to me. How quickly he come running when he heard my voice. Like he was starved for affection. I tossed and turned, the sheets tangling around my legs. My mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. The next morning, I called my friend Diane. We'd known each other since our children were in elementary school together. She'd been a social worker for 30 years before retiring, and I trusted her judgment. He actually said, "You've lived long enough." Diane's voice was incredulous over the phone. Those exact words, I confirmed, my throat tightening at the memory. Evelyn, I don't even know what to say. What's going on with him? I sighed, twisting the phone cord around my finger. I don't know. Since Renee left, he's been different, angry, distant, but it's Elijah I'm worried about. You should have seen him, Diane. He didn't look right. Not right how? Her voice took on a professional tone I recognized from our years of friendship. Thin, tired, dirty, like he hasn't been properly cared for in weeks. There was a pause on the line. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice breaking. He's my son. But Elijah is a vulnerable child who needs protection. Diane finished for me. Listen. Why don't I come over? We can talk about this face to face. An hour later, we were sitting at my kitchen table, coffee mugs in hand. Diane looked the same as always, silver hair cut in a practical bob, sensible clothes, kind eyes behind practical glasses. The sight of her familiar face was comforting. Walk me through everything you noticed, she said, taking out a small notebook, a habit from her working days she'd never broken. I told her everything, the state of the house, Marcus's bloodshot eyes, the way he'd been dodging my calls for weeks, Elijah's appearance, his eagerness to see me, the way he flinched when Marcus raised his voice. Diane took notes, nodding occasionally, her face giving nothing away. When I finished, she closed the notebook and looked at me directly. Evelyn, based on what you're telling me, there are clear signs of neglect here. The words hung in the air between us. Neglect, it sounded so harsh, so final. This was my son. We were talking about my Marcus. He's going through a hard time, I said weakly. The divorce is not an excuse to neglect a child, Diane cut in gently. You know that. I did know that. I'd raised Marcus alone after his father died when he was just 7. There have been hard times, bills I couldn't pay, nights I gone to bed hungry so he could eat, moments I'd been so tired I thought I couldn't go on. But I'd never neglected him, never. What do I do? I asked, my voice small. Diane reached across the table and took my hand. You have options. You could try talking to him again. But based on what happened yesterday, I'm not sure that would help. You could call Child Protective Services anonymously. They would investigate, determine if Elijah is safe. Report my own son. The very thought made me feel sick. They could take Elijah away. Only if they determine he's at risk. And if he is, isn't that what you want? For him to be safe? I pulled my hand away, standing up to pace the small kitchen. The linoleum floor creaked under my feet in the familiar spots in front of the sink. By the refrigerator. This house had been home for 40 years. I'd raised Marcus here. Taught him to tie his shoes at that very table. Measured his height against the doorframe in the hallway. I can't betray my son, I said finally. Then what about betraying your grandson? Diane's voice was gentle but firm. Sometimes doing the right thing feels terrible, Evelyn. That doesn't make it any less right. I stopped pacing and looked out the window above the sink. The neighbor's cat was lounging on the fence, grooming itself in the sun. Such a normal, peaceful sight when inside I felt like I was being torn apart. I need to think, I said. Diane nodded, gathering her purse. Call me anytime, day or night. At the door, she paused and Evelyn, document everything, dates, times, conditions, just in case. After she left, I sat back down at the table, feeling the weight of an impossible choice pressing down on me. Report my own son, the boy I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, or stay silent while my grandson suffered. I picked up a pen and a notepad, and with a shaking hand, I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then, methodically, I began to document everything I'd seen at Marcus's house, every detail I could remember, no matter how small. If I was going to do this, I would do it right. That night, I prayed for guidance, something I hadn't done in years. I asked for strength, for clarity, for the wisdom to know what was right. As I drifted off to sleep, Elijah's face floated before me, his eyes wide and pleading. I woke up knowing what I had to do. The next morning, I woke up with purpose. The weight of my decision sat heavy in my chest, but I felt clearer than I had in days. Sometimes being a mother or a grandmother means making the hardest choices. I called Marcus first. One last attempt to reach him, to offer help without judgment. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. I left a message, keeping my voice steady. Marcus, it's Mom. I'm worried about you and Elijah. Please call me back. I just want To help. I love you both. I didn't expect a call back, and I didn't get one that afternoon. I drove back to Marcus's neighborhood, parking a block away where my car wouldn't be noticed. I felt like a spy in one of those movies Marcus used to love as a child, and the thought almost made me turn around. What kind of mother spies on her own son? But then I remembered Elijah's thin face and I stayed put from where I was parked. I could see the side of the house and part of the backyard. I waited, notebook and pen in my lap, unsure what I was even looking for. After about an hour, the back door opened and Elijah came out alone, no coat despite the October chill, still in what looked like pajamas, though different ones from yesterday. He wandered aimlessly around the small yard, kicking at leaves, talking to himself. I watched him for 20 minutes while he played alone. No sign of Marcus. Eventually, Elijah sat down on the back steps, chin in his hands, the picture of loneliness. When he started shivering, I had to grip the steering wheel to keep from rushing over to him. Just as I was debating what to do, the back door opened again, and Marcus appeared. Even from a distance, I could see he was angry, gesturing wildly. Elijah quickly stood up, his little body tense. Marcus grabbed his arm not gently and pulled him inside. The door slammed shut behind them. My heart hammered in my chest. I wrote down everything I'd seen, including the time and the fact that Elijah had been outside unsupervised in inappropriate clothing. It wasn't enough, I knew. Not enough to prove anything, but it was a start. Over the next 3 days, I continued my surveillance. Each day brought new worries. I saw Marcus leave the house for hours at a time. No sign of a babysitter arriving. The curtains remained drawn. Once, I saw Elijah peeking out through a gap, his small face pressed against the glass, looking out at the world he wasn't allowed to join. On the 4th day, I got lucky, if you can call it that. Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door to Marcus, was outside watering her mums when I drove by. I'd met her a few times at neighborhood barbecues Marcus had hosted when Renee was still around. She was in her 70s, a widow with a sharp eye and sharper tongue. I parked and walked over, trying to look casual. Mrs. Patterson, Evelyn Langley, Marcus's mom, we met at the 4th of July party last year. She peered at me over her glasses. I remember. Haven't seen you around lately. No. I've been busy. How have you been? She set down her watering can. Can't complain. More than I can say for that grandson of yours. Poor thing. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? She looked around, then lowered her voice. I hear him crying at night. Through the walls, sometimes for hours. That son of yours, well, I don't like to speak ill, but he's not the same since his wife left. Have you seen Elijah recently? Not for weeks. Used to see him playing in the yard all the time when his mama was around. Now the poor child might as well be a ghost. She frowned, lines deepening around her mouth. I baked cookies last week. Thought I'd take some over. Your son wouldn't even open the door all the way, said they were busy. I could hear the TV blaring. Smell something awful from inside. Like garbage left too long. Each word was another weight on my heart. I thanked her and left quickly before she could see the tears in my eyes. That evening, I made the call. My hands shook so badly I had to dial twice. The woman who answered had a kind, professional voice. I gave her the information as clearly as I could: the conditions of the house, Elijah being left alone, what Mrs. Patterson had told me, what I'd observed myself. And your relationship to the child, she asked. I hesitated. I'm a concerned neighbor, I said finally. I don't want to give my name. She assured me I could remain anonymous. Said they would investigate within 48 hours. Thanked me for calling. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, the enormity of what I'd done pressing down on me. I reported my own son to Child Protective Services. In all the years I'd imagined what motherhood would be like, I'd never pictured this moment. The next day was the longest of my life. I kept my phone close, jumping every time it rang, though I wasn't sure who I was expecting to call. Marcus, the authorities. There was no procedure for this. No handbook for what happens after you report your own child for neglect. I tried to keep busy. I cleaned the guest room, which had become more of a storage space over the years. I washed the sheets, dusted the shelves, opened the windows to let in fresh air. I wasn't consciously preparing for Elijah, not really, but something in me knew to get ready. The call came late that afternoon, not from Marcus or CPS, but from Diane. They removed him, she said without preamble. Elijah, a colleague just called me. They did an emergency removal this morning. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. Where is he? Emergency foster placement for now. The house was worse than you described, Evelyn. Much worse. Marcus was not in a state to care for a child. What does that mean? She hesitated. He was intoxicated, belligerent with the caseworkers. They found evidence of ongoing neglect: no food in the fridge, unsanitary conditions. Signs that Elijah had been left alone regularly. They had no choice but to remove him immediately. I closed my eyes, Marcus's words echoing in my head. You've lived long enough. Well, I lived long enough to see my son fall apart, to betray him in the name of protecting his child. I lived long enough to feel my heart breaking all over again. What happens now? I asked. My voice hollow. They'll look for family placement. Options before considering long-term foster care. Has anyone contacted you? No. They will. She assured me, you're his grandmother. First option for kinship care. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my clean house, waiting for a call that would change everything. Again, it came the next morning. A woman named Miss Taylor, her voice brisk but not unkind. Yes, they had removed Elijah Langley from his father's care. Yes, they were looking for family placement. Would I be willing to come in for an interview? 2 hours later, I was sitting in a small office with beige walls and motivational posters, answering questions about my health, my home, my relationship with Elijah. I brought documents, my ID, social security card, proof of address, proof of income from my pension and part-time job at the library. I prepared as best I could, but nothing could prepare me for seeing Elijah again. They brought him in after the interview. He was clean, wearing clothes that weren't his, holding a stuffed bear I'd never seen before. When he saw me, his face lit up like sunshine breaking through clouds. Grandma. He ran to me, and I caught him in my arms, holding him close, breathing in the scent of institutional shampoo and someone else's laundry detergent. Double quotes, hello, my sweet boy. I whispered, my voice thick with tears. Can I go home with you? He asked, pulling back to look at me with those serious eyes of his. I looked at Miss Taylor, who gave a small nod. We're working on it, honey, I told him. Would you like that? Yes, please, he said with the careful politeness of a child who has learned to be cautious with his hopes. There were more meetings after that. A home inspection, background checks, mountains of paperwork. Through it all, I kept expecting Marcus to appear to fight for his son, to accuse me of orchestrating the whole thing. But he didn't. According to Miss Taylor, he hadn't even shown up for his first scheduled visitation with Elijah. Is he okay? I asked, hating that I still worried about him even now. He's been referred to substance abuse counseling and parenting classes, she said diplomatically. Whether he follows through will be up to him. A week after Elijah was removed from Marcus's care, I was granted temporary kinship guardianship. They brought him to my house on a Friday afternoon, a small duffel bag of hastily gathered belongings in hand. He ran straight to the guest room, his room now, and climbed onto the bed I'd made up with dinosaur sheets found in the attic, saved from Marcus's childhood. I remember this, he said, touching a faded T-Rex from before, from your visits. I confirmed, sitting beside him. This was your daddy's bed when he was a little boy. Elijah looked at me, his eyes too serious for a 4-year-old. Is daddy mad at me? The question broke my heart. No, baby, daddy's not mad at you. He's just sick right now. He needs to get better, and until he does, you'll stay here with me. Is that okay? He nodded solemnly. Will you take me to school when I start kindergarten? Every single day, I promised. That night after I tucked him in and read him 3 stories. After I checked twice that the nightlight was working and the door was open just the right amount. After he finally fell asleep clutching the new teddy bear Miss Taylor had given him. I sat in my living room and cried. For the little boy sleeping down the hall. For the man who had chosen bottles over his son. For the family that had fractured in ways I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. The next morning, I woke to small fingers patting my face. Elijah stood beside my bed, hair tousled from sleep, dinosaur pajamas new, purchased during a whirlwind shopping trip the day before, rumpled. Grandma, I'm hungry, he announced out such a normal, everyday statement, such an easy need to meet. I smiled, pushing aside the heaviness of the night before. Then let's get breakfast, shall we? I made pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse, the way I used to for Marcus. Elijah ate 3, syrup dripping down his chin, chattering about dinosaurs and Spider-Man, and the birds he could see through the kitchen window. Normal, beautifully, wonderfully normal. As I watched him eat, listened to him talk, I felt something settle in my chest, a certainty. I had done the right thing, no matter what came next. No matter if Marcus ever forgave me. No matter if he ever discovered who had made that anonymous call. I had done right by Elijah, and for now, that was enough. The first 2 weeks with Elijah passed in a blur of adjustments and paperwork. There were meetings with social workers, forms to fill out, appointments to keep. Elijah needed a pediatrician visit, which revealed mild anemia, and that he was underweight for his age. The doctor prescribed vitamins and a diet plan, her eyes kind but concerned as she explained that consistent meals would help him catch up quickly. Has he mentioned his father at all? She asked quietly while Elijah was distracted with a coloring book. He asks when he'll see him. I admitted, I don't know what to tell him. She nodded sympathetically. Children are resilient, but they need honesty, age-appropriate honesty. You don't have to give details, but don't make promises you can't keep. I took her advice to heart. When Elijah asked about Marcus that night, I told him simply, Daddy's working on getting better. I don't know when you'll see him, but it's not because of anything you did. He seemed to accept this, though I caught him staring at the photos on my mantle, sometimes pictures of Marcus as a child, as a teenager, at his high school graduation with me standing proudly beside him. In one photo, taken just after Elijah was born, Marcus held his son with a look of wonder on his face. Elijah studied that photo often, his small fingers tracing the glass dot. It broke my heart, but I didn't put the pictures away. He needed to know his father loved him once and could love him again. The social worker, Miss Taylor, called at the end of the second week. Marcus missed his supervised visitation. Again, I sighed, turning away from Elijah, who was watching cartoons. Has anyone heard from him? Not since the initial removal. He hasn't responded to calls or letters. Has he contacted you? No, I said, ignoring the ache in my chest. Nothing, we'll keep trying. The judge has scheduled a permanency hearing for next month. Given the circumstances, we'll be recommending an extension of your guardianship, possibly moving towards something more permanent. If Marcus doesn't engage with the reunification plan. That evening, Mrs. Wilson from next door came over with a casserole and barely concealed curiosity. She'd been bringing food every few days since Elijah arrived, each dish accompanied by probing questions. Still no word from Marcus, she asked, setting the casserole on my kitchen counter. No, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Such a shame. He always seemed like such a good father when they'd visit. People at church are asking. She continued, adjusting her purse strap. They want to know if they should add him to the prayer list. Betty Thompson was thinking of organizing a meal train for you. What would taking on a child at your age? The last part stung, though I knew she didn't mean it cruelly. I was 68, not ancient, but old enough that raising a 4-year-old raised eyebrows. After she left, I found Elijah hiding behind the couch. Why was she asking about Daddy? He asked, his lower lip trembling slightly. I knelt down, ignoring the protest from my knees. People are worried about him, that's all. Just like we are. Is he lost? The question caught me off guard. Lost? You said he was sick and needs to get better. But if people don't know where he is, maybe he's lost. I gathered him into my arms. He's not lost, honey. He knows where we are. He's just taking some time to figure things out, like when you do a puzzle and it's too hard. So you take a break, something like that, I agreed, wondering when my grandson had become so wise. That night, after Elijah was asleep, I sat with a cup of tea and a photo album. Pictures of Marcus as a baby, as a toddler not much younger than Elijah was now. The same dark eyes, the same determined set to his jaw. I'd raised him alone after David died, working 2 jobs, stretching every dollar, falling into bed exhausted. Each night, it had been hard, but never once had I considered it a burden. Never once had I neglected him or made him feel unwanted. What had happened to my son? When had he turned into a man who would abandon his child? Who would tell his own mother she'd lived long enough? The phone rang at 11:23 p.m. My heart raced as I answered. Hello, Ma? Marcus's voice was slurred, barely recognizable. Marcus. Where are you? Does it matter? You got what you wanted. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I know it was you. Who else would have called CPS on me? I didn't deny it. Marcus, you need help. Elijah needed to be safe. So you stole my son, my own mother. I didn't steal him. The court placed him with me because you weren't caring for him properly. You can get him back. Marcus, there's a plan. Parenting classes, substance abuse treatment, screw that. I'm not jumping through hoops to get my own kid back. You did this. You ruined everything. You're drunk, Marcus. Call me when you're sober. Don't tell me what to do. You think you're so perfect. Saint Evelyn, the perfect mother who never made a mistake. Well, guess what? You made a mistake having me, and you've made a bigger one taking my kid. The venom in his voice shocked me. This wasn't my son. Where are you? Let me come get you. Stay away from me. You've done enough. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, holding the silent phone, tears streaming down my face. Eventually, I called the police non-emergency line, requested a welfare check. The dispatcher took the information but made no promises. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went through the motions of breakfast with Elijah. Pancakes again because they were becoming our thing. Trying to hide my exhaustion. Are you sad, Grandma? I smoothed his hair. Just tired, sweetheart. Grandma didn't sleep well. Was it because of the phone? I heard it ring. Yes, it was a late call. Nothing for you to worry about. After breakfast, I took him to the park. He loved the swings, squealing with delight as I pushed him higher and higher on the bench nearby. Two younger mothers watched their toddlers, occasionally glancing our way. I was used to it by now, the curious looks, the assumptions. A gray-haired woman with a young child meant stories. As Elijah ran to the slide, one of the women approached me. She looked to be in her mid-30s, stylish in yoga pants and a North Face jacket. "He's adorable," she said, nodding toward Elijah. "Your grandson?" I nodded, prepared for the usual probe for details. Instead, she smiled warmly. "My mom raised me while my parents sorted out their issues. Best thing that ever happened to me." She handed me a business card. "I'm a family therapist if you ever need to talk. First session's free." When we got home, there was a police car parked across the street. My heart jumped to my throat. I hurried Elijah inside, asking him to pick out a book, then stepped back out to meet the officer approaching my porch. "Mrs. Langley, I'm Officer Ramirez. We spoke last night about your son. Is he okay?" "He's fine, ma'am. We did the welfare check. He was at his residence, intoxicated but not in any immediate danger." He paused. "However, there's something else. Your son came to the station this morning, making some accusations." My stomach dropped. "What kind of accusations?" "He's claiming you made a false report to Child Protective Services to gain custody of his son. He wanted to file charges against you." I felt lightheaded suddenly. "And did he?" "No, ma'am," we explained. "That CPS investigations are confidential, and even if you have made the report, doing so isn't a crime if done in good faith. Additionally, we have our own report noting the condition of his home, which corroborates concerns about the child's living situation." Relief flooded through me, followed by guilt. My son had tried to have me arrested. He was pretty upset when he left. Officer Ramirez continued, "If you're concerned about your safety, we can increase patrols in the area." I shook my head. Marcus wouldn't hurt me. Even as I said it, I wondered if it was still true. The next day was Saturday. We were planning a quiet day at home, but the doorbell rang during breakfast. Through the peephole, I saw Renee standing on my porch, looking nervous. I hadn't seen Marcus's ex-wife since she left him 6 months ago. I opened the door. "Renee? Evelyn." She twisted her hands together. I heard Elijah was with you now." Before I could respond, Elijah came running. "Mommy." He launched himself at her and she caught him, kneeling down to wrap him in a tight embrace. "Oh, my baby." Her voice broke as she held him. I invited her in. Elijah dragged her to the living room, eager to show her everything about his life with me. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, giving them time together. Renee joined me a few minutes later, Elijah reluctantly agreeing to play in the living room. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for taking care of him, for saving him." "You know what happened?" She nodded. "Marcus's neighbor called me, Mrs. Patterson, found my number and told me CPS had come, that Elijah was with you." She looked up, eyes swimming with tears. I should never have left him there. I knew Marcus was struggling, but I thought he'd pull it together for Elijah's sake. "Why did you leave him?" I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Renee's hands tightened around her mug. "I was afraid. Marcus was drinking more, getting angrier. He'd get in these rages, throwing things, punching walls. I told him to get help or I'd leave. He said if I tried to take Elijah, he'd find us and make me sorry." She looked up at me. "I thought if I left alone, got settled somewhere safe, got a restraining order. I've been working 2 jobs, saving up for a lawyer. I hadn't known any of this." Marcus had told me simply that Renee had left them. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked. "I would have helped. I was ashamed and scared." And Marcus said you'd take his side. "That you always did." The word stung because there was truth in them. I had always defended Marcus, always made excuses for him. "I'm sorry," I said, meaning it. "I should have asked more questions." She shook her head. "It's not your fault. Marcus is good at making people believe him." She set her mug down. "I want to be in Elijah's life. I know I don't deserve it after leaving him, but I'm his mother. I've been in therapy. I'm stable now. I have a small apartment, a steady job." "Have you spoken to CPS?" "Not yet. I came to you first. I wanted to see Elijah, to talk to you. I don't want to fight you for custody, Evelyn. I just want to be his mom again." I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse, genuine love for her son. "We should call Miss Taylor together," I said finally. "Set up a meeting to discuss what's best for Elijah. I think he needs both of us in his life." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. I was so afraid you'd shut me out. This isn't about me or you or Marcus, it's about Elijah." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand, "and Elijah needs his mother." Later, after Renee had spent the day with us, after Elijah had gone to sleep with a smile on his face, I sat alone in my kitchen again. The house felt different now. Not emptier. despite Renee's departure, but fuller somehow as if the possibility of healing had taken up residence alongside the pain and uncertainty. I thought about calling Marcus, trying once more to reach the son I knew was still in there somewhere. But I didn't. Some bridges couldn't be repaired until both sides were ready to meet in the middle. The next morning, Sunday, I woke to Elijah climbing into my bed, his small body snuggling against mine. "Is Mommy coming today?" he asked sleepily. Double quotes, yes. "Sweetheart, she'll be here after breakfast," he smiled, closing his eyes again. "Good. I want Mommy and Grandma. You've got us both," I promised, holding him close. As I made breakfast, I thought about the road ahead. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more meetings, more paperwork, more adjustments as we figured out how Renee fit back into Elijah's life. And Marcus, that wound was still raw, still bleeding. But for the first time since that terrible day when he told me I lived long enough, I was grateful for the years behind me, grateful for the strength they'd given me, the wisdom, the courage to do what needed to be done. I had lived long enough to save my grandson, long enough to begin healing our family, and perhaps, if the universe was kind, I would live long enough to see my son find his way back to us too. Our new routine with Renee developed quickly. She'd come over most evenings after her shift at the hospital cafeteria and spend weekends with us. At first, Elijah was clingy with her, afraid she might disappear again. He'd follow her from room to room, even waiting outside the bathroom door when she used it. Renee handled it with patience, never showing frustration, always reassuring him. "I'm not going anywhere, baby, Mommy's here now." Miss Taylor arranged a formal meeting with all three of us, me, Renee, and a court-appointed child advocate for Elijah. We sat in a conference room with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sickly. Renee wore her best outfit, a navy dress with a jacket that was slightly too big for her thin frame. I wore my church dress and sensible pumps. We both looked like we were trying too hard. "Our priority is Elijah's stability and well-being," Miss Taylor began, shuffling papers in a manila folder. "Mrs. Langley, you've provided excellent care these past weeks, and Ms. Warner, I understand you've been consistently visiting and want to resume your parental role." Renee nodded, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes. I made a terrible mistake leaving him with Marcus. I want to make it right." The child advocate, a soft-spoken woman named Mrs. Bennett, leaned forward. "Elijah has formed a strong attachment to his grandmother. Disrupting that could be traumatic, however. He clearly loves his mother and needs her in his life." "I don't want to disrupt anything," Renee said quickly. "Evelyn has been amazing. Her voice broke. "I just want my son back in my life." "What are you proposing?" Miss Taylor asked. Renee and I exchanged glances. We discussed this at length the night before, after Elijah was asleep. "Share custody," I said. "I'll maintain physical custody for now, while Renee continues rebuilding her life. She'll have liberal visitation, with overnight stays once she has suitable accommodations." Miss Taylor looked surprised. "That's unusually amicable. We both want what's best for Elijah," Renee said simply. After more discussion and paperwork, it was settled the arrangement would be reviewed in 3 months, with the understanding that Renee would gradually assume more parental responsibility. As her situation stabilized outside the building, Renee hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve your kindness." "Yes, you do," I told her. "You're doing the hard work of making things right. That deserves respect." We picked up Elijah from the courthouse childcare center and took him for ice cream to celebrate, though he didn't fully understand what we were celebrating. He just knew his mom and grandma were both smiling, both holding his hands as we walked to the car. And that was enough. That night, after Renee left and Elijah was asleep, I called Diane. I hadn't spoken to her since before Renee's return, and I needed a friend who understood the complexities of what was happening. "You're doing the right thing," she assured me after I'd filled her in. "Co-parenting with Renee is the best option for Elijah." "I know," I sighed. "I just wish that Marcus was part of it," she finished for me. "Yes, it's been a month, Diane. No contact except that one drunken phone call and his attempt to file charges against me. It's like he's just given up, or he's punishing you and himself." She paused. "Have you thought about reaching out to him?" I had, constantly. But each time I picked up the phone, I remembered his venomous words. "You've lived long enough. He doesn't want to hear from me." Maybe not. But maybe he needs to. After we hung up, I sat with my tea, considering her words. The house was quiet except for the tick of the old clock David had brought home one Christmas, the one Marcus had nearly knocked over learning to walk. So many memories here, so much history. Before I could second-guess myself, I picked up the phone and dialed Marcus's number. It rang 5 times before going to voicemail. His recorded voice sounded formal, professional. The Marcus who went to work in a button-down shirt, not the Marcus who had lived in the same sweatpants for a week. "Marcus, it's Mom. My voice wavered slightly. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But there are things you should know. Renee is back. She's seeing Elijah regularly. We have a court-approved arrangement. I paused, unsure how much to say. He misses you, Marcus. We both do. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'm here. I love you. I hung up, not expecting a call back, but feeling lighter for having made the attempt. The next day was Elijah's first day of kindergarten. He'd been registered months ago, back when Marcus and Renee were still together. We decided not to change schools. He needed consistency, and it was only a 15-minute drive from my house. Renee came over early, bringing a brand new backpack filled with supplies. We all had breakfast together, pancakes, of course, and then took turns helping Elijah dress in his new school clothes. He was jittery with excitement, bouncing on his toes as I combed his hair. Will Daddy be there? He asked suddenly. Stilling under my hands, Renee and I exchanged glances. No, sweetheart, she said gently. Daddy won't be there today. His little face fell. But you'll both be there, right? Of course, I assured him. Mommy and Grandma will take you together. This perked him up. And soon we were loading into my car. Elijah safely buckled in the back, Renee beside him. As I pulled out of the driveway, I happened to glance at Mrs. Wilson's house. She was at her window, watching us leave, telephone in hand. By noon, the whole neighborhood would know about our arrangement. The school was crowded with parents and children, the air buzzing with first-day energy. Teachers stood outside their classrooms, greeting students with bright smiles. Elijah gripped our hands tightly as we navigated the hallways, looking for room 103, Mrs. Peterson. We found it at the end of the primary wing. A tall black woman with silver-streaked braids was kneeling to speak with a crying little girl. She looked up as we approached. Her smile warm and reassuring. You must be Elijah, she said, standing to greet us. I'm Mrs. Peterson. Elijah half hid behind Renee's legs, suddenly shy. Hello, he said in a small voice. Mrs. Peterson didn't seem fazed by his retreat. I have a special cubby just for you with your name on it. Would you like to see? Elijah nodded, still clinging to Renee. But his curiosity piqued. Go ahead, baby, Renee encouraged. I'll be right here. As Mrs. Peterson led Elijah to a row of cubbies on the far wall, she glanced back at us with a question in her eyes. She'd been expecting Marcus, I realized. The registration paperwork would have listed him as a father to contact. I'm Elijah's grandmother, I explained quietly. And this is his mother. There have been some changes in the family situation, understanding dawned in her eyes. I see. We should talk later. When it's less hectic, she handed me a card. My planning period. Call the school and they'll connect you. I nodded gratefully, tucking the card into my purse. Saying goodbye to Elijah was harder than I expected. He clung to Renee, tears welling up in his eyes. Don't leave me. It's just for a few hours, she soothed. Grandma will pick you up this afternoon, and I'll see you tomorrow, remember? He nodded reluctantly. I bent down to hug him, ignoring the twinge in my back. Be brave, sweet boy. You're going to have so much fun. Finally, with Mrs. Peterson's gentle coaxing, he let go and joined the other children at the activity tables. Renee and I lingered at the door, watching until he seemed settled, then forced ourselves to leave. In the parking lot, Renee wiped tears from her cheeks. Does it ever get easier? Never, I told her honestly. But you get used to it. I dropped her at the bus stop near her apartment, promising to call if anything happened at school. Then I headed home, the house feeling strangely empty without Elijah's chatter. I had 3 hours before pickup, time I'd normally spend working at the library. But I'd taken the day off, wanting to be fully available for Elijah's first day. I cleaned up the breakfast dishes, straightened Elijah's room, started a load of laundry, normal tasks that felt foreign without him underfoot, asking questions, requesting stories. As I moved through the rooms, I found myself pausing at the mantel, looking at the photos of Marcus. What was he doing right now? Did he even know today was Elijah's first day of school? Did he care? I was folding warm towels from the dryer when the doorbell rang. Probably Mrs. Wilson, I thought, eager for details about the morning. I considered not answering, but curiosity got the better of me when I opened the door. Marcus stood on my porch. He looked terrible. Unshaven, hair too long, dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. But he was sober. I could see it in the clarity of his gaze, the steadiness of his stance. Marcus. His name came out as a whisper. I got your message, he said, his voice rough. About Renee. I nodded, unable to form words, my heart hammering in my chest. Today's Elijah's first day. He continued. I kept the date on my calendar. Back when? He trailed off, looking past me into the house. Is he here? At school? I managed, Renee. And I took him this morning. Pain flashed across his face, right? Of course, he turned to go. Marcus, wait. I stepped onto the porch. Would you like to come in? Talk? He hesitated. Conflict clear in his expression. I don't think that's a good idea. I wanted to see him. School lets out at 2:30, I said. I'm picking him up. You could come. He shook his head. I can't. Not yet. I'm not. He gestured vaguely at himself. I'm not right yet. But you're trying. It was half statement, half question. He nodded, looking down at his worn shoes. 30 days sober yesterday, court-ordered rehab. I wanted to hate you for it. But he met my eyes. I needed it. Relief flooded through me. So powerful I had to grip the doorframe for support. Oh, Marcus, don't, he said, holding up a hand. I'm not ready for forgiveness. Not from you, not from Renee, not even from myself. I just wanted to know he was okay. That's all. I straightened my shoulders. He misses you. Every day. A muscle worked in his jaw. Yeah, well, I'm working on earning my way back. He stepped off the porch. Just tell him I asked about him. If you think it's right, I will. I promised. And Marcus, I'm proud of you for getting help. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Don't be proud yet, Ma. I've got a long way to go. Then he was gone. Walking to a car I didn't recognize parked at the curb, I watched until he drove away, holding my breath, releasing it only when he turned the corner and disappeared from sight. It wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't even close. But it was something, a crack in the wall, a glimpse of the sun I remembered, and for now, that was enough to hope on. I went back inside, checked the clock, 2 hours until pickup, 2 hours to process what had just happened, to decide what, if anything, to tell Elijah. I picked up the phone and dialed Renee's number. She deserved to know, to be part of this decision. We were in this together now. For Elijah's sake. As the phone rang, I looked again at the photos on the mantel. Marcus as a boy. Marcus holding baby Elijah. Maybe someday I'd add a new one. Marcus, Renee, Elijah and me, a family. Fractured but healing. Hello, Renee's voice, breathless like she'd run to answer. It's Evelyn. I said. You won't believe who just stopped by. Elijah's face when I told him his daddy had stopped by was a mixture of emotions too complex for his small features to fully express: hope, confusion, wariness, and joy, all battling for dominance. Did he ask about me? He wanted to know, sitting at the kitchen table. Homework folder untouched beside him. We'd been home from school for an hour, and I'd waited until Renee arrived before telling him. He did, I confirmed, exchanging glances. With Renee across the table, we'd agreed to be honest but cautious. He knew today was your first day of kindergarten. Why didn't he come see me? The hurt in his voice was palpable. Renee took his hand. Daddy's still working on getting better. Remember? He wanted to make sure you were okay. But he's not ready to see you yet. Because he's sick, yes, I said. But he's getting help, that's a good thing. Elijah considered this, his brow furrowed in concentration. Will he be better by my birthday? His birthday was 2 months away. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. I don't know, sweetheart. Getting better takes time, he nodded solemnly, accepting this with the peculiar wisdom children sometimes possess. Can I make him a card to help him feel better? Renee's eyes met mine over his head. Both of us fighting tears. That's a wonderful idea, she said, her voice only slightly strained. Why don't we do that after dinner, later, after Elijah was in bed? Renee and I sat at the kitchen table again, this time with cups of tea and Elijah's card between us. He'd drawn a picture of himself with Renee and me on one side, and Marcus on the other. A big sun shining overhead. Get well soon, Daddy was written in careful kindergarten letters across the top. With Renee's help. Do you think he'll come back? Renee asked quietly, tracing the edge of her mug with one finger. For real? I mean, not just a visit, I sighed. I don't know. 30 days sober is a big milestone. But it's just the beginning. And there's so much hurt on all sides, she nodded, looking down at the card. He was good once. Before the drinking got bad. He was a good father, a good son. Too, I added, feeling the familiar ache of loss. I want to hate him, she admitted. For what he did to Elijah. For what he put us through. But then I see his face in Elijah's and I just feel sad instead. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. In the week since her return, we'd developed a relationship I would never have expected, not quite friends. But something deeper in some ways, co-parents, allies in the shared mission of helping Elijah heal. One day at a time, I said, echoing the phrase Marcus had used during his brief visit. For all of us, the next morning, I dropped Elijah at school. He insisted on carrying his card for Marcus in his backpack just in case, then drove to the address Marcus had reluctantly given me before leaving. It was a halfway house on the other side of town, a plain 2-story building with a small sign identifying it as New Beginnings Recovery Home. I sat in the car for a long time, the card on the passenger seat beside me, debating whether to go in. Would my presence help or hinder his recovery? Was I pushing too hard? Too fast? Before I could decide, the front door opened and Marcus emerged. Dressed in work clothes, jeans, steel-toed boots, a faded blue shirt. He looked better than he had the day before. Cleaner. More purposeful. He headed toward a pickup truck parked on the street, not noticing my car. I made a split-second decision, grabbing the card and getting out. Marcus, he turned, surprise and wariness crossing his face when he saw me. Ma. What are you doing here? I held out the card. Elijah made this for you. He wanted you to have it. He hesitated, then took it, careful not to let her fingers touch. He opened it, his expression softening as he took in the childish drawing. He carried it to school today. I said, in case you showed up. Marcus closed the card, his Adam's apple, bobbing as he swallowed hard. I can't. I'm not. I know. I said quickly. I'm not pushing. I just wanted you to have this. He nodded, tucking the card into his back pocket. I've got to get to work, part of the program, construction job. That's good. Work is good. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with all the things we weren't saying. Finally, he sighed. Look, I appreciate you bringing this and taking care of Elijah, but I need space. I'm still figuring things out. Of course, I understand. I took a step back, giving him physical space to mirror the emotional distance he needed. Just know that when you're ready, if you're ready, we'll be here. He gave a jerky nod and got into the truck. I watched him drive away, hoping I'd done the right thing. Over the next few weeks, a tentative pattern emerged. Marcus would call once a week to ask about Elijah. The conversations were brief, stilted, but he never missed a call. He sent a small gift for Elijah, a toy dinosaur with a note saying he was thinking of him. Elijah treasured it, sleeping with it clutched in his small hand. Renee found a better job at a medical clinic, with regular hours and benefits. She moved to a slightly larger apartment with a second bedroom for Elijah to use during his overnight visits, which had started under Miss Taylor's supervision and were now a regular weekend occurrence. I went back to work at the library part-time, finding comfort in the familiar routine of shelving books and helping patrons. My coworkers were curious but tactful, asking after Elijah but not prying too deeply into the circumstances that had brought him to live with me. Life settled into a new normal, not perfect, but stable. Elijah thrived in kindergarten, making friends, learning to read simple words, bringing home art projects that covered my refrigerator. He had nightmares sometimes, calling out for his daddy, but they grew less frequent as the weeks passed. Then came the call from Miss Taylor. Marcus has requested a supervised visit with Elijah. My heart raced. When? This weekend, if that works for your family. At the visitation center, I called Renee immediately. We agreed that it was a positive step but approached it with caution. That evening, we sat Elijah down together to tell him. Daddy wants to see you, Renee said gently, this Saturday. His eyes widened. Really? Is he all better? He's getting better, I said carefully. Enough that he feels ready to see you. But it's just a short visit at a special place where families spend time together. Will you both be there too? He asked. Renee shook her head. No, baby, just you and Daddy. But Grandma and I will drop you off and pick you up. He was quiet, processing this. Is Daddy still mad? No, sweetheart, I assured him, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. He just wants to see you. Saturday arrived with a nervous energy permeating the house. Elijah changed his outfit 3 times, wanting to look nice for Daddy. He insisted on bringing the dinosaur Marcus had sent him. Renee came over early, as tense as I was, though we both tried to hide it for Elijah's sake. The visitation center was a cheerful building with bright murals on the walls, designed to put children at ease. A social worker greeted us, explaining the process of our supervised visit in a room with toys and games. Marcus was already there, she told us, waiting in the visitation room. Saying goodbye to Elijah at the door was harder than I expected. He suddenly looked so small, so vulnerable. Clutching his dinosaur as a social worker led him away. Renee and I sat in the waiting area, not talking much, both lost in our own thoughts. The hours seemed to stretch endlessly. I thumbed through outdated magazines without reading them. Renee paced, checked her phone, paced some more. Finally, the door opened and Elijah came out. His face tear-streaked but smiling. Behind him walked Marcus, looking more like his old self than I'd seen in months. Clean-shaven, haircut, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks instead of work clothes. Mommy, Grandma. Elijah ran to us, excited. Daddy and me played dinosaurs. Daddy and I, Marcus corrected automatically. Then caught himself, looking embarrassed. An awkward silence fell. The social worker stepped in smoothly. The visit went very well. Everything proceeded as planned. Renee knelt to Elijah's level. You had fun with Daddy? He nodded enthusiastically. He said maybe next time we can go to the park, we'll see. Marcus said, his voice careful. It depends on a lot of things. Renee stood, facing him directly for the first time since before he'd been reported to CPS. You look well, Marcus, 90 days sober yesterday, he said. A hint of pride breaking through his reserve. That's great, she said, sounding like she meant it. Another silence, this one less tense but still uncertain. I should go. Marcus said finally, my sponsor is waiting. He looked down at Elijah. Thanks for coming to see me, buddy. I missed you. I missed you too, Daddy. Elijah hugged Marcus's legs tightly. Marcus bent and embraced him properly, closing his eyes briefly. When he straightened, he gave me a small nod. Ma, it's good to see you, Marcus, I said. Meaning every word. He left without responding. But there had been no anger in his eyes, no accusation, just weariness and something that might have been hope on the drive home. Elijah chattered excitedly about everything he and Marcus had done, the games they'd played, the stories Daddy had told him, how Daddy had promised to come to his birthday party if he's still getting better. Renee caught my eye in the rearview mirror. We both caught the conditional nature of that promise. But it was a promise nonetheless, a step forward. That night, after Renee had gone home and Elijah was asleep, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the autumn leaves drift across the yard. Mrs. Wilson came out to collect her mail. Waiting when she saw me, heard Marcus is back in the picture, she called. Unable to contain her curiosity, normally, I would have given a polite, non-committal answer. But tonight, I felt something different, not a need to explain or defend, but a quiet certainty. He's working on it, I said simply. We all are. She looked like she wanted to ask more, but something in my expression must have stopped her. She just nodded and went back inside. I returned to my tea, thinking about the day's visit. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. Marcus hadn't suddenly transformed back into the son I'd known. The father Elijah remembered. He was still struggling, still finding his way. But he'd shown up. He played dinosaurs. He corrected Elijah's grammar in that automatic way parents do. Small things. But sometimes, small things were the most important ones. Like the way Elijah had held his father's hand as they walked out of the visitation room, like the way Marcus had said 90 days with quiet pride, like the way Renee had acknowledged his progress without dismissing the hurt he caused. We were all learning to live in this new reality, finding our places in a family that had broken apart, and was now trying to reassemble itself in a different pattern. It wouldn't be the same, it couldn't be. But maybe, just maybe, it could be whole again in its own way. The phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Marcus, calling at his usual time to ask about Elijah's day, even though he'd seen him himself. Hey Ma, he said, his voice less guarded than usual. Just checking in. He's fine, I told him. He had a wonderful time with you today. Yeah. I could hear the smile in his voice. Me too. And for the first time in months, we talked about Elijah, about Marcus's program, about the future. Not all of it easy, not all of it resolved, but real conversation without anger or blame. When we hung up, I sat a little longer on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. You've lived long enough, Marcus had told me on that terrible day that seemed a lifetime ago. He'd meant it as a dismissal, an erasure. But sitting there, I realized there was an unexpected truth in those words. I had lived long enough to see beyond my own hurt, long enough to fight for my grandson, long enough to begin healing the wounds in our family. Elijah's birthday arrived on a crisp Saturday in November, exactly 4 months after he'd come to live with me. We planned a small party at my house, nothing elaborate, just family and a few friends from his kindergarten class. Renee took charge of decorations, transforming my living room with dinosaur balloons and streamers, while I baked the cake chocolate with vanilla frosting. Dinosaurs marching across the top and green icing. The question hanging over us, unspoken, but ever present, would Marcus come? He continued his weekly supervised visits with Elijah, each one a little longer, a little less guarded. He'd mentioned the birthday when I dropped off Elijah last weekend, saying he'd try to make it. Not a promise, but not a refusal either. Elijah woke early that morning, bounding into my room while the sky was still dusky. Is today my party? Yes, birthday boy. I pulled him into bed beside me, cuddling him close. How does it feel to be 5? He thought about it seriously. The same as 4, but bigger. I laughed, kissing the top of his head. You are definitely bigger. You've grown to inches in summer. Daddy said I'm tall like him. He informed me, pride in his voice. You certainly are, I agreed, ignoring the small pang in my chest. Every mention of Marcus still brought mixed emotions: joy that Elijah was rebuilding his relationship with his father, anxiety about where it all might lead. The doorbell rang at 10, an hour before the party's official start. Renee arriving. Early with bags of last-minute supplies, she was flushed with excitement, her hair styled. Wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. "You look nice," I commented, helping her with the bags. "Thanks," she smiled. A quick flash of white teeth. I wanted today to be special. There was something in her voice, a barely contained energy that caught my attention. Is everything okay? Is everything okay?